live? Okay, hello everybody, welcome back. This is our second cooking session. I'm very excited to be here. Today we are going to be making kidney-friendly chicken strips, a pasta Alfredo sauce that can be used in a variety of different ways. Today we're going to make a pasta Alfredo mac and cheese, and we are going to make a kidney-friendly Caesar salad dressing to put on romaine lettuce to make a Caesar salad. The first thing we're going to do before we do introductions or housekeeping is we are going to preheat our oven. So same as last time, it's very important that you preheat your oven, that your oven comes up to temperature before you put the food in the oven. So if everybody could please go to their oven, and today we are going to preheat it to 425 degrees.
You need a hand to come down.
Okay. Excellent. So I hope everybody has their oven set and we will get started. So again, I'm Meredith and I am the dietitian in the Chronic Kidney Disease Clinic. And today I have Alicia, who's the master's student in nutrition and dietetics at UBC, doing the technology in the background. And Kiana, the other master's student, very exciting news. She is not here today because she is participating in the Pan Am Games. And she ran the steeplechase event yesterday and placed 5th, which is absolutely amazing. So we yay, Kiana! But we look forward to having her back with us in our third and final session, which will happen in 2 weeks. Okay? So the very first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we have clean hands and that we have clean surfaces in our kitchen. So if everybody could get a cleaning cloth and get some spray. It can be a multi-purpose spray. It can be a bottle with a little bit of bleach and water in it. If you're doing that, please make sure that you label the bottle clearly, so it's very clear what is in that empty bottle. And it can also be soap and water, whatever you have available. We are going to clean our surfaces and then we are going to wash our hands with soap and water. Now, I clearly was not practicing safe kitchen skills earlier, and I've actually already cut my finger. So I will be wearing a rubber glove over my Band-Aid. And that is just a good tip, that if you do cut yourself in the kitchen, and you do have to have a Band-Aid on your finger, it is a great idea to then put on a glove. Band-Aids do carry a lot of germs and a lot of bacteria. They get dirty, hard to keep them really, really clean, so it is a good idea to cover them up. Okay, let's clean our surfaces. Okay, so I'm just gonna take my spray around my cooking area and just wipe it down so it's nice and clean. Also a good idea to wipe off your tap handle and your faucet. And then we're gonna wash our hands with soap and water. Excellent. The first thing that we're going to get started on today are our chicken tenders, because they will take the longest amount of time to bake. And when we are using meat, it is important to have clean surfaces, clean hands. It's also a good idea to have a separate cutting board that you specifically use for meat. So at home, I like to use a glass cutting board for my meat because it's non-porous and it's very easy to clean. Here in the teaching kitchen, we are using a red colored cutting board for our meat so that we know that red is always for meat. You can also take a Sharpie and you can write on your cutting board at home meat, so you know that's your meat cutting board. And then once we've used this cutting board, it's a really good idea if you have a dishwasher to put it in the dishwasher so that it gets nice and clean and sanitized. Or if you're cleaning it in the sink, you can add a little bit of bleach into the water to make sure that it gets really clean. So if everybody could get their chicken. So I'm using chicken breast. It can be chicken breasts. If you have chicken thighs, it can also be chicken thighs. Chicken thighs will make more of a chicken nugget type shape. With the breasts, you can cut them into nice long strips for tenders. And before we open our package and cut our chicken, we will prepare our 3 bowls for assembling our chicken tenders. So you will need to have 3 separate bowls. In the first bowl, we are going to make our flour and seasoning mix. What I have chosen to put into the flour is garlic powder and onion powder and some pepper. You are certainly welcome to use any seasoning that your child or family likes. If your child is a spicy fan and likes things spicy, you could put a little pinch of cayenne. You could put lots of different herbs. Any seasoning that works for your child or your family, you are welcome to add to the seasoning mix. So our recipe calls for a 1/4 cup of flour. Depending on how many chicken tenders you're going to be making, you may need to increase the amount of flour to make sure that you have enough coating to coat all the chicken tenders. So there's my flour. And as I mentioned last week, when you are buying garlic powder, onion powder, you do want to make sure that you're buying the powder and not the salt. They do also sell garlic salt and onion salt, but you do just want the powder, which has all the nice flavor of the garlic and the onion, but none of the salt. So into our flour, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of garlic powder and 1 tablespoon of onion powder. You can use measuring spoons, or you can also just use household measures. And just a reminder, 1 teaspoon, which is the small spoon, is 5 mils, and 1 tablespoon is 15 mils, so it's the equivalent of 3 teaspoons. So whatever you have available, I'm using a tablespoon. So I will take 1 tablespoon of garlic powder and 1 tablespoon of onion powder. And then into that, I'm going to add just a teaspoon, the little one, of black pepper. If your child does not like pepper, you do not have to add the pepper, but it does add some nice flavor. Okay, so we will mix this all up together, just so it's nice and incorporated, and all the spices are mixed into the flour. So that's going to be the first bowl that we're going to dip our chicken tenders in. Our next bowl is going to be our wet ingredients. And in this bowl, we're going to put 1 egg and 1 tablespoon of water. Okay. And just some information tidbits. In North America, we do refrigerate our eggs. In Europe, they do not. And if you've ever traveled to Europe, you will notice that the eggs are not refrigerated. They're just sitting out at room temperature. And that is because they're not washed. We wash our eggs. And once you do that, it makes the shell more porous and more susceptible to having bacteria enter into the inside of the egg. So we do keep our eggs refrigerated. And you do want to make sure that there's no cracks in the egg. If there is a visible crack, it's a good idea just to discard that egg because there's an even greater potential that there could be some contamination. So as long as our eggshell is nice and intact, there's no visible cracks, and it's been refrigerated, we are ready to go. So we will crack our egg. I like to wash my hands after I've cracked the egg just to get any residue off because we do always want to cook our eggs to make sure that we're killing any bacteria that could be present inside them. And if you're touching other things with raw egg on your hands, there is the potential that you might spread that bacteria. So once you've cracked your egg, let's give our hands a wash. And again, I forgot to mention, you can keep yourself on mute. If anybody has questions, you're free to come off mute and ask your question out loud. You can also put it in the chat room and Alicia will be able to read that out. I've got a little whisk. If you don't have a whisk, you can also use a fork. Either will do the trick. And we're just going to whisk our egg up so that the yolk breaks and mixes into the white of the egg.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there a difference between like free range and cage free and regular eggs?
So the only difference really from a nutritional standpoint, no. An egg is an egg is an egg. The only difference is the way that the animals are treated and the way that the animals are cared for. So in free range, animals are allowed to have a certain perimeter of space that they're allowed to move around in, whereas traditional farms that create eggs, the chickens are housed in pens where they really don't get to get out and move around. But from a nutrition standpoint, no. Sometimes you may notice that your eggs, the yolk are different colors. So sometimes they're very pale and sometimes they can be very, very dark. And this often has to do with the type of feed that is being fed to the chickens. And this can influence the color of the yolk. Also, seasonal variations. At different times of the year, there's different types of feed that are available to the farmers to feed the chickens, and this can influence the color of the egg. Sometimes you may also notice a little bit of blood in the yolk of the egg when you break it, and this is absolutely fine and okay, and it's perfectly fine to go ahead and use an egg that has a little blood spot in there. But no, there really is no nutritional difference between any of the eggs. It really just comes down to practice and how the animal is being treated. That's a great question. Okay, into our egg, you're going to add 1 tablespoon of water. So I'm going to measure it out with my tablespoon and just put it into my little measuring cup. Easy to bring it over and pour it in. I've managed to flood myself. Now that I have my tablespoon of water, I'm going to dump it into my egg and whisk it up one more time to incorporate the egg and the water together. Okay. And into our last bowl, we are going to add our breadcrumbs or our panko flakes. I like to use the panko. They're not seasoned, and so they are just breadcrumbs. I like the fact that they're a little lighter and a little fluffier, but you certainly are welcome to use any type of breadcrumb. that you have. I just would recommend not using seasoned ones. Any product that has the word seasoned in it automatically is going to have sodium, and it could also potentially have added phosphorus. And if you wanted, you can even make your own breadcrumbs. If you have stale bread, you can whiz it up in a food processor and make your own crumbs, but Panko also does a really nice job. So we want about a cup of our breadcrumbs. So now we're going to have like a little assembly line going on once we cut our chicken. And we also need to prepare our baking sheet so that we have somewhere to put our prepared chicken strips. So if everyone can grab a baking sheet, I like to put a piece of tin foil over the baking sheet so that the chicken strips don't stick and make a mess on the pan. You don't have to do this, but it does make cleanup easier, and I find that they get a little crispier. So if you want to grab a piece of tin foil, put that onto your pan. And then on top of the tin foil, I like to spray a little bit of cooking spray. If you don't have cooking spray, you can just take a little bit of olive oil or canola oil, put a little bit in the middle of your tin foil and use your hand just to spread it out, or the back of a spoon to spread it out. So I'm just going to give a spray. And now my pan is all prepared for my chicken strips. So the next thing we're going to do is cut our chicken. So again, using your meat cutting board, we'll take our chicken and we are going to try and cut them into long strips so they resemble chicken tenders. So here's an example. This is, or do you want to spotlight? This is, this is a great size to cut your chicken just into a nice chicken tender size strip.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is fat something we need to worry about with CKD?
So children with CKD are often struggling to get enough calories. So we're often recommending that they have higher calorie foods. However, it is a good idea to trim off, visible fat from meats, because we know that the fat that is associated with meat, especially the white fat, is a saturated fat. And we also know that children with CKD often have elevated levels of lipids in their blood. And so often their cholesterol can be a bit high, triglycerides can be a bit high, and their low density lipoprotein blood lipid can be a little bit on the higher side. So it is a good idea to be eating what we call the good or the better types of fats, which would be the monounsaturated and polyunsaturated and the unsaturated fats. It is a good idea to avoid the saturated fats, which is the hard white fat found in meat, as well as coconut and palm oil are also the only two vegetable sources of saturated fat. Those tend to build up, especially if you have higher fat levels. So while we do want to encourage good caloric intake, and we do want to add fat and calories by using full fat milks, whipping cream in some instances to increase calories, full fat, yogurt products, things like that, it is a good idea to avoid saturated fat. Hope that answers that question. So again, we are cutting our chicken up into our chicken tender type strips. And again, I'm going to cut off the little pieces of visible fat that are on my chicken. And if your chicken has skin on it, please remove the skin, because that also has a lot of fat between the skin and the chicken. Okay, now our hands are going to get very messy because we are going to be dipping from dry to wet to dry. A good way to try and avoid getting big clumps on your fingers is to try to use one hand for dry and one hand for wet, if you can remember that. So the first thing we're going to do is take our tender, we're going to coat it in our flour and seasoning mix. Then we will coat it in our egg and water mix. And finally, we will coat it in our panko flakes and then lay it on our tray. And I did not switch hands, I forgot. And I now have a gunky mess on my gloved hand. So I'll try to remember this time. Again, coat it in the flour, transfer to your wet hand, coat it in the wet ingredients, stick it in your panko flakes, and put it on our tray. So you can try doing a couple at a time. You don't want to overload the amount that you put in, then they will not get fully coated. But you can take 3 or 4 of the chicken strips, put them in your flour mixture, toss them around to make sure they're fully coated in the flour. Then kind of one at a time, dip them in the egg and dip them in your panko and put them on your tray.
What is wrong with store-bought chicken tenders?
That is an excellent question. And I do have a label example to show you. So once we've finished coating our chicken tenders and I've cleaned my hands, I will pull that out of the freezer. The problem with the store-bought chicken tenders, one, the meat is very processed. So they are not using nice, fresh strips of chicken breast like we're using. They're actually using all sort of the remnant chicken parts, and they're grinding them all up, and they're adding a lot of preservatives. So there will be a lot of sodium, there will be phosphate additives, there's also probably potassium additives, and they're also putting fillers into that chicken. So there will just be a whole bunch of additives in there. So they are going to be highly processed. They're going to be higher in sodium, higher in phosphorus, and also have added potassium. Whereas the chicken tenders that we're making, we know that we've used nice, fresh chicken breast. We've added no salt and no other additives, no phosphorus additives. And we know that our chicken tenders are a nice, healthy item for our children. You can make these ahead of time, and you can cook them until they're almost fully cooked, cool them down, and then you can actually wrap them in saran wrap and put them in the freezer so that you have them ready to go. And then you can pull them out when you need them and finish baking them again in the oven. And that's a really easy thing to do so that you're not having to have, time constraints if you're having to make them last minute. Now I have run out of panko flakes, so for my last
I can help you.
Oh, okay. Run out of egg too. I'm just going to throw my lot. I've only got one little tender here. I'm just going to throw him on the tray, just coated in some flour. And
we do have another question from the chat. Yeah. So someone is curious if you can use something other than egg for the wet mixture.
You can use milk. I have seen recipes where they've used milk. You could use whipping cream. So if you had an egg intolerance or an egg allergy and you didn't want to use egg, then a milk wash would be a suitable alternative for that. That was a great question. So the first thing we want to do after we finish breading our chicken tenders is we do need to clean up our work surface area a little bit. Because I've used this glove to touch chicken and egg, I'm going to remove it. I will put a clean glove on. We want to remove our holes. Remove our cutting board because we are not going to use this cutting board to cut anything else. We don't want to accidentally cut fruits or vegetables on a cutting board that we've cut meat on. So we are going to remove the cutting board. We're going to wash our hands, and then we're also going to spray down our cook area again. Okay, so again, I'm just going to use my cooking spray and wipe up any drips that might have fallen onto my cooking surface. Make sure that it's nice and clean. Wipe that off. Okay, question. Is everybody's oven up to temperature? If your oven is not, please let us know in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to assume that everybody's oven is good to go. Whoops. I'm ripping my glove. There. Okay. So what we want to do now is we want to put our chicken strips into the oven. If your children are helping you, make sure that they have, here's what our chicken strips look like. If your children are helping you, make sure that they have oven mitts, and make sure when they open the oven that they stand back, that they're not leaning over and opening it directly up into their face, because the hot air will come up and hit them in the face. So have them open it standing back, wait a few seconds, and then they can bend over and put the item into the oven. So if everybody could put their chicken strips into the oven. We will set a timer for 15 minutes, and then we will flip our chicken strips over, and then we will bake them for 10 to 15 more minutes. You could set a timer. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to pull out my store-bought package of chicken strips. So these are a very popular chicken strip, and I did look this morning when I was at the grocery store at all the options that were available, and they were all very similar. So it really didn't matter if you bought a store brand name or any of the types of chicken strips that were there. They all had very similar labels. So if we look at this label, you can see that the calories are 170 calories. And the amount of sodium is 380 milligrams of sodium. So again, that's too high. If we use our rule of thumb, we like the milligrams of sodium to be equal or less than the calories that are in the serving of food items. So this would not fit that rule. And if we look, there's also 100 milligrams of potassium that are showing up on the label. So this would be from added potassium that's added into the processing of the chicken. Okay. The next thing we want to do is we want to get our water boiling to cook our pasta before we go ahead and make our pasta sauce or our dressing. So if everyone can take their pot and fill it with water. And then you're going to want to turn on your burner and turn it on to high. I usually like to just kind of put my top loosely onto the top of the pot. That might help it to boil a bit quicker. And we just want to get our water boiling for the pasta. Okay. While we're waiting for that, I think we will go ahead and prepare our salad dressing and our Caesar salad. That way, once the water's boiling and the pasta is cooking, we can prepare our sauce and hopefully everything will be ready to eat all at the same time. Okay? So for our Caesar salad dressing, and again, I brought some examples. So with the Caesar salad dressing that we're making, it has 18 calories per tablespoon serving and 18 milligrams of sodium. So it does meet our rule for the same amount of sodium as calories. Now we're not adding any salt to it, but we are adding some Parmesan cheese, which we know does contain naturally some salt. And we're adding some yogurt, which would also have a little bit of sodium. If we look at our store-bought Caesar dressing, in 1 tablespoon, there are 45 calories and 135 milligrams of sodium. So again, dressings, seasonings, sauces, they all are very, very high in sodium. So whenever possible, it is a good idea to make these yourself so that you are reducing the amount of sodium that are in those products. And I hope you all enjoyed the salad dressing that we made last week. And if you've never made homemade salad dressing, I hope that that was a good experience. And I hope that you were able to see how flavorful and how delicious you can make things at home and how easily without adding the salt. Okay, so if you have a mason jar or another type of empty jar with a lid, that is excellent. I am going to put all of my ingredients directly into my jar because I'm going to shake it to mix all the ingredients together. The first ingredient that we have is our yogurt. And I really do recommend using a high-fat yogurt. If you don't know how to tell, when you look at milk products, they always have MF and a percentage. And that's the milk fat percentage. So a 9 or a 10% is going to be the highest that you'll find in a yogurt. And that is the one that I recommend using. It is a bit creamier. Some of the lower milk fat percentage yogurts can be a bit watery and they don't hold up as well when you're mixing them together. So again, trying to find a 9 or 10%, and it's that MF that you're looking for. And that's a great way too, when we talk about trying to add extra calories into your child's diet, to try and utilize dairy products that do have the higher fat rating. Okay. So we're going to add a 1/4 cup of our high-fat yogurt, and we'll put that directly into our mason jar. And into that, we are going to add 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil. So again, you can use measuring spoons or you can just use household measures. And it doesn't have to be exact. So I'm going to measure out 1, and then I'm going to estimate 1/2 and measure out 1/2. The next thing we want to add is our garlic powder, and it's about 3/4 of a teaspoon. So using your teaspoon, you can just fill it not quite full. And again, there's no harm if you go a little bit over. It's just going to be a little more flavorful. And 3/4 of onion powder. So again, I'll use my teaspoon. Now you're going to want to juice your lemon, because we do need some fresh lemon juice. You can also use real lemon if you have a bottle of real lemon that's in your fridge. And if you don't have, I'm just taking the seeds out before I juice it. If you don't have a juicer, you can always just take a spoon and stick your spoon in and squeeze your lemon around it and twist, and this will also juice your lemon. I got a couple seeds in there, so if I can see them, I'm going to try to pick them out. So again, you can put your spoon in, move it around, juice your lemon. And if you do get any seeds, just try and pick them out. So obviously, if you do have a lemon juicer, that is the easiest because it will catch all the seeds on the rim and it will prevent them from going into your dressing.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you use mayonnaise instead of yogurt?
Yes, you could use mayonnaise. And that would be a great substitution. Mayonnaise, just look at the label. It does have a little bit of added sodium, and it does have a little bit of additives, but not in a huge, great quantity. So that would be a suitable substitution. Okay. Now we need to grate our cheese. So we will also need Parmesan cheese for our Alfredo sauce. So we might as well just go ahead and grate all of our cheese right now. And last week we talked about cheese, and we talked about when you are using cheese, the stinkier the cheese, more flavorful kind of the better, because you can get away with using a lot less and still getting a really great flavor boost to whatever item you're using. I like to use one of the smaller grating sides of my grater. If you don't have a grater, you can take a knife and you can just flake it off. You can also crumble it up with your fingers, but if you do have a grater, using the smaller side, you're probably going to need at least half of your wedge if you have a full wedge of Parmesan. So I would just go ahead and grate it all, and if you have any left over, you can put it into a Tupperware container and just store it in the fridge. And just, if your kids are doing this, just, get them to be mindful of their fingers when they get close to the grating surface so that they don't accidentally grate their knuckles or their fingers.
Can we add croutons to the salad?
That is an excellent question. So I did bring some croutons to show you. And again, with any packaged item that is seasoned, there is going to be added sodium. So when we look at this package of croutons, you can see that there are 30 calories per serving, which is a quarter cup, and there are 60 milligrams of sodium. So not bad, but it is 2 times, so that doesn't fit, our rule. A good thing to do for a substitution is that you could make your own croutons. And if you wanted to make your own croutons, you could just take some chunks of bread, and you could even use the dough recipe that we made last week. You could bake some of the dough, and you could chop it up, and you can put some unsalted butter and some garlic powder to season, toss it, and you can toast them in the oven, and you can make some homemade croutons that way if you really wanted to use some and make your own. I also brought, I might as well show now, Caesar salad kits are really popular. And this is just one of many that are available out there. And this kit does come with some Parmesan cheese, it comes with some bacon bits and some croutons, and some dressing. So if we look at the nutrition label, the calories in one container is 310, and the amount of sodium is 560. So again, a lot of that sodium is coming from the dressing, the bacon bits, the croutons, and that is quite a significant amount of sodium. I also brought some bacon bits because some people do like to have bacon on their Caesar salad. And again, you can see that in 1 teaspoon, which is not a lot of bacon bits, there's 25 calories, there's 150 milligrams of sodium, and there's also 40 milligrams of potassium. If we look at the ingredient list, you can see that there are a lot of ingredients that have sodium, and it also does list sodium phosphate right on the ingredient list. So that would be used as a preservative in this food product. If you really wanted to add a little bit of bacon, I would buy the reduced sodium, cook it yourself, crinkle it up, and only use a very, very, very scant amount. Okay. So now that we have our nice grated Parmesan, we are going to add 1.5 tablespoons. So again, you can use measuring spoons or you can use your household spoons. And was that our timer?
Yeah.
Okay, that was our timer. So let's pause what we're doing with the dressing. Get our chicken tenders out of the oven. Give them a turn. So I will bring mine over and turn them here so you can see what they look like. Okay, so here are our chicken tenders. So using a fork, or you can use tongs, whatever you have available. They will be a little bit hot, so you probably don't just want to use your fingers. You can flip over, and hopefully, because we've sprayed the tin foil, hopefully they're not sticking. They might be sticking in a few places. Just try to loosen them up. Flip them all over. And then we're going to put them back in the oven for probably another 15 minutes. Okay, so we will set another timer so that we know when they're ready. Back to our dressing. We added our Parmesan. Now we need 1.5 teaspoons of Dijon. So teaspoons are the small one. I just need to wash my teaspoon off. And we want 1.5 teaspoons. There's one. And there's half of our Dijon mustard. And the final ingredient that we add is a little bit of pepper. If you don't like pepper, you don't have to add it, but it will just give a little bit of flavor and zing. I like to pour the pepper out, into my hand. That way if I make a mistake and I pour too much, I can pour it back into the container. And it's just 1/2 teaspoon, so not too much. You can just eyeball it. If you like pepper, you can put more. And once we have all of our ingredients, we're going to put our lid on. And then again, like we did last week, we're going to give it a really good shake and really shake it all up. And we'll have to shake it again before we put it on to our salad. But we'll just shake it all up. And we've got some really nice homemade Caesar salad dressing, which we will get to try in a little bit. Okay. I can hear my water is boiling, so I'm just going to turn the temperature on the burner down to about a medium low. And why don't we go ahead and wash our lettuce and get our lettuce all ready so that once our sauce is ready and our pasta is ready and our chicken tenders are ready, everything's ready to go.
Can you keep the salad dressing in the fridge for a few days?
Yes, you want to keep the salad dressing if you have leftovers in the fridge. And it's good in the fridge for about 5 days. You don't want to leave it really longer than that. Again, our salad dressing that we're making here has no preservatives. It has no sodium. So it will not last as long as store-bought dressing. So five days is kind of the max. So again, just a cutting tip. If your children are wanting to participate and they want to do some cutting or chopping, remember to get them to make a fist, tuck their thumb under their fingers, put their knuckles onto the edge of the food, and then cut with their fingers all tucked in. That way they're less likely to have an accident and cut their fingers. So we are just going to chop our lettuce up into sort of good bite-sized pieces. It is very important to wash your lettuce. You can either wash it in a colander and drain it and dry it off with a kitchen towel, or you can wash it and put it into a lettuce spinner if you have one, and that will spin all of the water off. So I'm going to put my lettuce in the colander and I'm going to wash it under cold running water. because I have one, I am going to put my lettuce in the salad spinner. But again, if you don't have a salad spinner, you can use a clean kitchen towel to dry your lettuce. And this is a really, if you do have a salad spinner, it's quite a fun thing for your child to do. It's quite fun to turn it around and to use the salad spinner. So we'll just give it a good spin. And our lettuce is dry. So I'm just going to add my clean dried lettuce into my salad bowl. And then I'll give my dressing another shake. And, oh, it smells so good. Using a spoon, I'm going to scoop my dressing out of the jar. Onto my lettuce. And then I'm going to give it a good mix to distribute the dressing all over my lettuce leaves. It really does smell delicious. I hope yours smells as good as mine. Can't wait to taste it. And once that's all mixed up, I'm just going to take a light sprinkling of the Parmesan that I've grated, and I'm just going to do a light sprinkle over the top of the salad. And wow, look at that. Gorgeous, gorgeous Caesar salad. I'm going to stick mine in the fridge so that it stays refrigerated while we're making our pasta. Now we will move on to making our pasta and our sauce. With the pasta, the choice is yours. You can use any type of pasta that you want. It does not matter. For today, I chose to use the elbow macaroni to make a mac and cheese type dish. Now, when you're taking a lid off a pot that's been boiling, you want to always open it away from you so that the steam doesn't come up. Steam can actually burn, so you do want to be careful and open it away. It's also a good idea to use an oven mitt because the handles on the pots can get quite hot. So your water should be rapidly boiling. Again, we're not adding any salt into the pasta water. I don't add oil. If you did want to add a little bit of oil, you could go ahead and do that. It'll prevent the pasta from sticking together. Personally, I don't. And then I'm going to make about 2 cups of dried pasta.
Can you use other types of pasta like whole wheat or gluten-free?
Sure, you absolutely could use other types of pasta if you wanted to use gluten-free, whole wheat, whatever type you like to eat. Absolutely fine to go ahead and use any kind of pasta. Okay, I am going to give my pasta a little bit of a stir. Cleaning my spoon. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a stir in my pot. And then if your water has stopped boiling, you can turn the temperature up a little bit more just to get it to come back to a rapid boil. And while our pasta is cooking, we are going to make our Alfredo sauce. So again, I brought some really great examples of different mac and cheeses, different sauces, just to demonstrate, why are we doing this? Why are we taking the time to make it ourselves? So if you look at, this is a jar of Alfredo sauce. And if you look at the label, you can see that per half cup of sauce, there are 140 calories, but there are 670 milligrams of sodium. So that is a lot of sodium. There are also 100 milligrams of potassium. So again, by making it ourselves, we are significantly cutting down all of those additives. I also brought some different mac and cheese products. So this is your standard original KD. This is an Annie mac and cheese, and I know that Annie's mac and cheese is really popular among a lot of kids. Hate to burst anyone's bubble, but if anyone was buying Annie's because they felt that it had more of a health connotation with it, or they felt that it was a healthier choice, they're actually identical. The only difference is that Annie's mac and cheese does use an organic pasta, which would mean that the wheat that goes into the wheat flour that goes into the pasta is organic, but other than that, there is no difference. So if we look at our craft dinner, there are 360 calories in a 2/3 cup portion and 560 milligrams of phosphorus, but whoa, look at that, 400 milligrams of potassium. So this really is a triple whammy. It's a high sodium, high phos, high potassium food item. If we look at the ingredient list, you will see I've underlined the sodium phosphate that's on the ingredient list added to the product. If we look at the comparable Annie mac and cheese, again, there are 330 calories, there are 560 milligrams of phosphorus, and there's 300 milligrams of potassium. And this is in a slightly smaller serving size. It's for half a package. I also highlighted in the ingredient list the disodium phosphate that is added as a preservative. I also brought some of the white cheddar versions, because I know sometimes people think, well, the orange one is so bad, I'm going to buy the white one, and that's going to be a better choice. So if we look at the My Compliments white cheddar mac and cheese, again, in half a cup or half the package, there are 370 milligrams of sodium, 440 once you've added the butter and the milk. There's 590 milligrams of phosphorus and 500 milligrams of potassium. So again, this is a triple whammy. I've underlined the sodium phosphate in the ingredient list. If we look at the Annie's mac and cheese, the white shells, again, really no difference. 330 calories, 590 milligrams of sodium, and 300 milligrams of potassium. So this is also a triple whammy. These are really popular. These are the little Katie cups. You just have to add hot water and away you go. So again, in 1 cup, there are 230 calories. There are 590 milligrams of sodium, 400 milligrams of potassium. And I actually circled on the ingredient list that you can actually see where they've listed potassium chloride, there's sodium phosphate, and dipotassium phosphate. So this has a lot of potassium and phos additives that are listed on the ingredient list. So this is why we're making our own. The sauce is also something that you can make ahead of time, and if you wanted to, you could, if you were making like a mac and cheese and you wanted to make a big tray of it, You could make the mac and cheese in the tray, and then you could freeze it, and you could pull it out of the oven, and you could reheat it so it could be ready to go. So we need 4 ounces of cream cheese. That is our timer. So before we start the sauce, if everybody can check on their chicken tenders and see how they're looking. I'm going to go grab mine from the oven. So we do want our chicken tenders to be nice and golden. Another good way to check to make sure our meat products are done is using a meat thermometer. And I highly do recommend the use of a meat thermometer. Whenever I'm cooking hamburgers on the barbecue, I always use a meat thermometer to make sure that they've come up to temperature. So you do want to stick the meat thermometer in the center of the product in kind of the juiciest part. And you want to leave it there until it stops moving, or if you have a digital thermometer, that's really great. It gives you sort of an instant digital reading. And you want to make sure that the internal temperature of your meat products is not in the danger zone. So if you're making a steak or a whole steak or pork product, sort of 149, 150 is going to give you like a medium rare in the middle. If you're making hamburger, you definitely want it to be above 165 degrees. For chicken, again, you want it to be above 165 degrees. And that's just to make sure that your food is cooked, your meat is cooked in the center, and any bacteria that would have been present is destroyed by the heat. You need a higher temperature for meat that's been mechanically processed, like ground beef and ground meats, than you do for the whole product. And for chicken, because of the risk of salmonella, you do want to make sure that it's reached temperature. So on my thermometer, I am outside of the danger zone, which is the red zone. So I know that my chicken tenders are ready and done. So I'm going, yes. The pasta. We need to check that. Now with pasta, typically it's around kind of 17 minutes. What I like to do is if I think it's ready, I'll take a small amount of pasta out of the pot and I will run a little bit of cold water over it to cool it down. And then I will just give it a try. You don't want it to be super mushy. You want it to kind of be al dente, which means that it still is a little bit firm, but not too firm. And I think my pasta is perfect. So I am now going to use my oven mitts because my handles might be hot. And I'm going to take my pasta off the stove, run it into my colander, and then I'm going to run cold water over my pasta. This stops the cooking process so that your pasta doesn't continue to cook. So again, I'm going to use my oven mitts and I'm going to carefully pour my pasta into the colander. I have a little tiny bit of pasta stuck to the bottom of my pan. I'm just going to use a spoon to loosen that up. I'm going to put my pot onto a burner that I did not use. So I don't want to put it back on a hot burner. And I'm going to run some cold water over my pasta. gonna give it a shake to get some of the water off. And then I'm just gonna set my colander right on the top of my pot. If you don't have a colander, you can use the lid to drain the water off the pasta. Just be really careful that when you're doing that, you hold the lid in such a way that the steam doesn't come up and burn you or hit you in the face. Okay, so now all we need to do is make our Alfredo sauce. So again, with our cream cheese, we need 4 ounces, and 4 ounces is half a package or half a cup. Cream cheese comes in an 8-ounce package. So I am going to figure out how to open this. It should be straightforward. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to open my package. There are marks on my package, so I'm just going to score it. I'm going to use half the brick. So I want half my package of sauce. And if you wanted to make a larger quantity, you certainly could go ahead and just double the recipe, and you could use the entire brick, but then you'd have to double all the ingredients. We're going to cut our cream cheese up into little cubes. And we're going to add, it doesn't have to be a large pot because we're not making a really large amount of sauce, but you're going to add your cubes into your pot. And we're also going to add our half cup of grated Parmesan cheese. So I'm going to fill my half cup, put that into my pot. And I need my butter, and I have just bought unsalted butter. And I need a 1/4 cup. You could also use margarine if you wanted. I do find when you're making things where you're, melting the butter and mixing it together, butter does seem to produce a slightly better final product, but there is nothing wrong with using margarine if that's what you have. And I need a 1/4 cup of butter. So again, on my package, I have the markings across the spine. So I'm going to mark a 1/4 cup. And again, I'm going to chop that up just into smaller pieces. We do have to add 3/4 cup of whipping cream. And whipping cream is a really great way to add calories into food products without adding the extra phosphorus that regular milk has, or potassium. So whipping cream is really low in potassium, and it's lower in phosphorus compared to regular milk. And I often tell patients that their lab values are such that they really can't drink regular milk, that a good solution to that is to drink the unfortified rice milk and to add a couple tablespoons of whipping cream. So the whipping cream will give it a more creamy consistency because the rice milk is quite thin, but it doesn't add all of the other phosphorus or potassium into that. It is also a great way when you're making any dish that has a creamy sauce or creamy element to use whipping cream to add those extra calories because it is quite calorically dense. So we're going to add 3/4 cup. So where did my 1/4 cup go? Just going to wash my 1/4 cup measuring cup off. And then 3/4 cup, so 3 of these. And then we want to add a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper and an 1/8 teaspoon of garlic powder. So I've got my little measuring here. You can add more garlic powder if you like more of a garlic taste. I actually quite like the garlic, so I'm just going to add about 1/2 teaspoon. And a little bit of pepper. Okay. Once we have all of our ingredients added into the pot, we are going to put it on the stove, and we want to turn our burner onto about a medium heat. Okay. And then you are going to want to stir this as everything melts. You can use a whisk, you can use a spoon, it doesn't matter, but you do want to keep it kind of continuously moving while the butter and the cream cheese are melting.
A question.
Yes.
So we talked about trying to avoid saturated fat earlier. Do I need to worry about the fat in dairy products?
No, so studies have shown that the fat in dairy products actually is different than the saturated fat that is found in the hard fat and the marbling fat on meat products. And so they've actually shown that it does not have the same impact on raising blood lipid levels, and there actually can be some benefits in the dairy fat. So that is an excellent question, but no, you don't have to worry about the higher butter, the milk fat in the dairy products. Okay, so things should be starting to melt and come together. And what you can also do if you wanted to make a mac and cheese using this sauce is you could take a casserole dish and you would want to grease it with either some butter, some margarine, or some cooking spray. And then once you've mixed your pasta and your sauce together, you could put that into the baking dish, and then you could sprinkle some panko flakes on top. And if you wanted to season those panko flakes with some garlic powder, onion powder, some pepper, whatever, some parsley, dried parsley, whatever seasonings you had. And then you could sprinkle just a light sprinkling of Parmesan cheese on top of the breadcrumbs, and you could bake that in the oven, and that would make a really nice pasta bake. And if you also wanted to add some broccoli into that, or that's chicken, you could add some chicken, and you could make a chicken broccoli pasta bake using this Alfredo sauce and cooked pasta, and that would be a really nice, easy, quick, once you had it made dinner. You could also freeze it once you had it all together, and then you can pull it out of the freezer, thaw it, and pop it back in the oven to reheat it and crisp it up, and that's a really great thing to do. There's lots of options with this, and you can use fettuccine noodles, you can use pasta noodles, you can use rotini, any type of pasta that your child likes, and really it's just up to how creative you can be on what you can make with this.
Another question about cheese.
Yep.
So you said before that we want to focus on the stinky hard cheeses. So why can we use cream cheese in this recipe?
So cream cheese is actually not really cheese. So if you look at cream cheese, it's really more, if you had to categorize it, I would put it into really the fat category. It's not a real cheese despite the name. And so cream cheese is actually very, very low in phosphorus compared to other cheeses. And this particular package of cream cheese, there's 100 calories in 2 tablespoons and 90 milligrams of sodium. So it does meet our rule for the sodium content. It does have 30 milligrams of potassium, but that is quite low. And when you look at the ingredients, there's just milk ingredients and some carabine gum that just kind of makes it that consistency. But it's really not, it's called a cheese, but it's not a cheese. Really, it's a fat. And so we do recommend, if you're trying to increase the calories in your child's diet, putting cream cheese on bagels, cream cheese on toast, cream cheese on rice cakes with a little bit of jam. Those are all really great ways to increase calories without adding extra high amounts of phos, and it does meet our sodium requirements. So that's an excellent question. Unfortunately, there are a lot of products out there that really are misnamed, and I know it does get confusing, but cream cheese is a good calorie vehicle. Okay, so my sauce is actually coming together really well. I have just a tiny bit of cream cheese that still needs to dissolve. I'm going to turn my temperature down a little bit because mine is starting to boil, and I don't want it. I want it to melt and come together, but I don't want it to rapidly boil. And I think for me, mine is all incorporated. Now there's a couple options that you can do here. You can put your pasta into a bowl and pour the sauce over top of it and mix it up. Or I'm gonna actually pour my pasta right into my saucepan. So I'm gonna turn my burner off. It's off. I'm gonna take my drained pasta and I'm just gonna add it right into my sauce. And then I'm just gonna mix it all together. Again, I'll just show over here. I've just mixed that all together. So again, if you want, you can pour it into a bowl and mix it together, or you can do it right in the pot. And when you go to serve it, if you want, you could also sprinkle another small amount of grated Parmesan cheese on that. So to summarize today, we have made some delicious homemade chicken tenders. Again, you can make these ahead of time, you can wrap them, you can keep them in the freezer, you can pull them out when you need them and put them onto a baking sheet, put them back in the oven, just like any other frozen chicken tender products. These are low in phosphorus, they're low in sodium, and they are the real deal. They are just fresh chicken breasts. They're not processed, mechanically pulverized chicken remnants. We have made delicious Alfredo pasta sauce that you can use in many different ways, and you can become creative and make many, many different options out of this. And again, it is lower in our sodium, phosphorus, and potassium, and is a much more kidney-friendly option than the packaged Kraft Dinner or Annie's mac and cheese products. And we have also made a delicious Caesar salad. Now, if you wanted to get really ambitious and creative, something that would also go nice with this meal would be to make the pizza dough that we made last week and to form it into breadsticks. And you could brush them with some butter, put some garlic powder on top. You could put a little bit of the grated Parmesan cheese on top, and you could make some really, really nice breadsticks to go along with this.
I have a question.
Yeah, I have a question.
So we're wondering if we can use any sauces to dip our chicken tenders in, and someone asked specifically about plum sauce.
Yeah, so I would look on the label of the plum sauce, and again, when we're looking at the label, we want to look at how much sodium there is. There also are some recipes that, if you want to email me, I'm happy to provide for making your own homemade dipping sauces. With ketchup is a common one for kids. Ketchup is very high in sodium. So what we do recommend is that you use little like dots of ketchup, and a nice thing for kids is if you want to make a little smiley face on their plate. So, 2 dots for the eyes and then do like a little mouth, and that's kind of the limit of the ketchup because it is higher in sodium. But there are some recipes for alternative sauces. DaVita is an excellent website for getting kidney-friendly recipes. We can post that in the chat. It's davita.ca. Also, Spice It Up. Spice It Up has excellent recipes, and they will have some sauce recipes, and that's an excellent idea. So I didn't think about doing a dipping sauce. If we were to do this again, then that definitely is something that I would look at including in the items that we make. But you're right, kids always like to have something to dip in. Excellent question. Good. Are there any other questions? No? If not, I want to thank all of you for spending the afternoon with us. I can see with our time change, it's already getting quite dark out there. I know, sad, sad when that happens. I hope everybody has their supper now made and ready to go. Now you just get to sit down and relax. I hope your kids enjoy this. I welcome, any comments, feedback on the recipes. And I really hope that everybody will join us in 2 weeks because boy, are we going to be ambitious. We are doing a Mexican fiesta. We are making our own tortillas. We are making all the Mexican stuff to go along. It's going to be amazing. And I really hope that everyone can join us for that. And just a reminder that following our next session, which is in 2 weeks, we will be sending out the questionnaire again, and we will ask you to complete that, and that will complete the study. Once your participation in the study is completed, we will be sending you a gift certificate to the grocery store to help offset the cost of the ingredients that you had to buy for doing this. So again, I thank you all for joining us. I hope you had a great time. I had a great time, and I'm really looking forward to our next session in 2 weeks. Okay. Great. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your dinner.